Hi, Debbie here, and today I have a simple Valentine shaker card to share, inspired by one of my Christmas cards I made, which turned out to be one of my favourites of the season. The Christmas card I made was this one, and I love the simple design of the embossing paste through a stencil in a pinky peach coffee and cream colour scheme. So for my card today, I used many of the same supplies: ivory and silver pearlescent card and the BoBunny rose gold glitter paste through a stencil. I just mixed up the supplies slightly to change the theme to Valentine's. So I'm using the All My Heart stencil from Stencil stamp and cutting out the centre with a nested hearts die to create a fun but simple shaker. The sentiment comes from the Stencil stamp Love Messages set. Okay, so let's crack on. I have a piece of pearlescent card from my stash. I'm not sure where I got this from, but I'll link a similar card in the supplies along with the rest of the products I used today. I've got the All My Heart stencil. I love the random placements of hearts around the large central heart, but I wanted to cut that area out to create the shaker. I looked through my dies and didn't find an exact match, but one good enough, and that's from the Nested Hearts die set from Stencil stamp. I kept the die in place with a piece of washi tape roughly centred on the card and ran it through my die cutting machine. Now I was able to play around with the placement of the stencil to get the best fit. My aim was to nestle the tiny heart at the point of the heart die cut area and then line up the rest of the hearts around the edges. Some of the hearts overlap the edge of the die cut area, but that's okay. I then taped the stencil in place on all four sides to ensure it didn't shift when I added the glitter paste. So this is the rose gold glitter paste from BoBunny. It's a lovely colour in the jar, definitely a pinky colour similar to my nail polish when it was wet, and then when it dries it goes a more bronzy metallic colour. Very pretty, but check out the dry colour against my nail polish later on for reference. I used a spatula and spread the paste over the stencil in a manner similar to spreading butter on bread. I kept scraping off any excess, keeping an eye out for any gaps to ensure a nice even coverage. I then scraped off any excess left on the palette knife back into the jar to use another time, and securely close the jar up to prevent it drying out. And I also gave my palette knife a going over with a baby wipe. Lifting the stencil, and it's so pretty. I love this BoBunny glitter paste. I put the stencil in a bowl of water to soak, and I'll clean that up later on. I went around the edges of the die cut area with a scalpel to remove any paste overhanging the edges and just to tidy up a little bit. You could leave the paste to dry naturally, but for the sake of this video I speeded up the process with a heat tool. I just made sure to keep the heat moving around the card to prevent any warping. I then trimmed the piece down around the die cut opening, and here you can see the dry colour of the glitter paste in comparison to my nail polish. Definitely more of a bronze than a pink, but oh so pretty. I'm going to mount the heart panel onto a piece of silver Starlight card from Crafter's Companion. This is another pearlescent card, and although it's called silver, I'd say it definitely has a more warm coffee look to it to me. So now I have the heart die cut piece, the silver piece, and then for the card base I cut a piece of ivory card. However, before I start adhering everything together, I need to make the shaker part of the card. To keep the sequins contained, I'm going to back the heart panel with a piece of Lifestyle Crafts plastic sheet cut to be slightly smaller than the heart panel and adhered on the back with Scor-Tape. You don't need to be too precise with the tape, just enough to make sure the acetate isn't going anywhere. However, to create the well that the sequins sit in, that needs to be a good secure fit around the shape of the heart. To do this, I doubled up a piece of foam tape. This will give extra room for the sequins to shake about. We don't want a cramped shaker where nothing moves. So having doubled up the tape, I now cut it into thin strips and remove both sides of the backing paper. The foam is now really flexible and I can easily bend it to fit around the heart opening. You just need to make sure that any gaps in the tape are smaller than the sequins and such that you put inside. I added the rest of the tape around the edges so that when I adhere this piece to the silver piece of card, it would be fully supported all round. And now it's the fun part of choosing the sequins and bits and bobs to put in the shaker. One of my favourite sequin mixes currently is the Girl's Best Friend sequin mix from Stencil stamp. I just love the large semi-opaque white ones and the smaller sparkly clear ones. However, I felt the pink confetti in the mix was a bit too pink for this pinky peach coffee and cream look, and so I added a few peachy sequins from the Pastel Paradise set from Little Things from Lucy's Cards. Now here comes the bit that I find tricky. I seem to have a real issue at getting things on straight. Wonky lines are the norm for me, even when I can see fully what I'm doing, and so the success rate of this first method I tried of attaching the back to the shaker was perhaps doomed to fail from the start. I align the shaker portion using the grid on my glass mat, and then gently press the silver card on top, again using the lines of the grid. Not surprisingly for me, it wasn't on straight, but as I had only very gently adhered one to the other, I was able to pull them apart and try again. This time I gathered the sequins in the middle of the silver panel and added a few more sequins for good measure too. Then I aligned the shaker on top. This was relatively successful, and then I just trimmed the edges of the panel a little to correct a slight misalignment. I added glue runner to the back of the silver card and adhered the panel to the ivory card base. With the shaker section complete, I just needed to add a sentiment, and for this I used the Love Messages set from Sam Says Stamp. This is a great set with plentiful sentiment options, however I chose to keep things simple and use the I love you greeting. I aligned the stamp on a piece of the silver card in the mini MISTI, closed the drawer of the MISTI to adhere the stamp to the door, and then treated the card with an anti-static powder bag to help prevent embossing powder randomly sticking everywhere. I then stamped the sentiment in clear embossing ink and sprinkled with white embossing powder. Both of those are from Sam Says Stamp. I then used a preheated heat tool to melt the embossing powder before trimming the piece to a skinny banner. I like to use a scalpel and clear ruler with grid lines for this, and this is because I stand the best chance of trimming the piece straight. I then adhered the sentiment to the top left of the card with more foam tape. And that completes this simple Valentine shaker card. I'll leave links in the YouTube description below to the products that I've used today, as well as a link to the coordinating blog post over at limedoodledesign.com. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial, I'd be delighted if you subscribe to this channel. Also, if you'd like to get notified when a new video is out, don't forget to hit the bell button next to the subscribe button too. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.